Hello again and welcome to Week 4's lecture. This is Callie. I want to start out this lecture by just reviewing what we've gone over so far in the class. Let's start with the research process that we talked about last week. As of right now, within this research process, what you should be able to do is beginning to gather background information so that you can start to have a question. And this week, of course, we're developing that question, but you've already taken some steps to start to develop that question. So what you should be able to do is identify health topics on Healthy People 2020. You should be able to find background information using a general encyclopedia. We went online and used the database Britannica Online. Then we found a subject-specific encyclopedia, and we did that by going to the library catalog, searching for the subject and encyclopedia in the search bar there, and our subject that we searched for was health. So we used health and encyclopedia to find the encyclopedia, and then we just did a search inside that encyclopedia to find the article. So we found two articles that provided background information on the topics. So anytime in the future, if you have a topic that you need to research, that's an excellent way to start. So use Britannica Online and then find a subject-specific encyclopedia. If you ever have trouble finding a topic, then Healthy People 2020 is a great place to go because they've identified health issues in the U.S. that are problems. Then finally, under having a question, we did a concept map to allow us to think about subtopics and subtopic branches within our topics. Whether you actually do a concept map for future research or just mentally brainstorm, you should be able to think about narrower topics and broader topics around that topic. And then next in the evaluate information, of course, the CRAP test, you should be able to think about currency, relevancy, accuracy, authorship, and purpose of any information that you come across. And then in the readings, you should have gone over the following different types of information: subjective versus objective, factual versus analytical, and then primary versus secondary versus tertiary information. If any of those words sound unfamiliar to you, please review the last week's readings. This week's readings will also touch on them a little bit, but you should definitely, moving forward, know what those terms mean. Alright, so we've covered having a question, gathering information, evaluating information. So this week, we are going to move forward with having a question. We're going to talk about how to actually develop the question based on what we've done so far. And then we're going to start using that question to develop a search strategy so that we can gather more information. And then, of course, we're always evaluating. And we're also going to start a reading this week about how to read scholarly sources, and that's going to help us synthesizing information. And we're also going to get an introduction to citing sources. So that covers this week's topics. In this lecture, moving forward, I'm going to cover numbers 1 through 4. So research question development, research strategies, developing search formulas, and controlled vocabularies. The other lectures will cover citing, and then of course the reading that you'll do this week, one of them will help you with reading scholarly sources. So let's start with research question development. Research question development starts with the main topic, which we should all have from Healthy People 2020. Then you need to restrict the topic, then narrow your topic even further by looking at a specific population that's affected by that topic. So when you identified a health issue on Healthy People 2020, I had you also look at some statistics and identify a population that is most affected. That's an excellent population to use in your research question. And then you put that all together to ask a question. For example, my topic is diabetes. My restricted topic might be type 2 diabetes, since that's a subtopic of diabetes. So in my reading, I found that people of South Asian origin have 5 times the risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to white people. So that's why I'm going to look at that population specifically, because they're so disproportionately affected by type 2 diabetes. And then I'm going to ask what can be done to prevent type 2 diabetes among South Asians living in the United States. So this question takes a topic, restricts it by looking at a specific part of that topic, then restricts it even further by looking at a specific population that is disproportionately affected, and then I can make a question out of that. So a great question should identify an issue or a controversy or a problem as one of the variables. For this, we're doing a health topic. Then it should identify additional variables. For this, we're using the population at risk and a geographic interest. So diabetes, South Asians, and United States. It should be open-ended, so it can't be answered with a simple yes or no. And it should also be something that you might be able to take a stand on or make a conclusion about. So perhaps just brainstorming, I could say that additional visits with a nurse practitioner would decrease the health risks of type 2 diabetes in the South Asian American population. And I'm not sure if that's true or not. I'm not an expert and I haven't researched this field, but just brainstorming, you always kind of want to be thinking creatively about your topic. So within the field of research questions, all the different types of research questions that can be asked about topics, there are different types. So descriptive or exploratory, and this just helps us to have a better understanding of the topic. If you ask a descriptive or an exploratory question, the answer that you come up with at the end would help to provide a better understanding of the issue. There's cause and effect or causal questions. And this type of question, the end conclusion of the paper, evaluates the relationship between two variables. So an example of this would be, what effect does patient education have on the incidence of type 2 diabetes? The next one is measuring or base rate or process. Each one of these has different titles because each different discipline kind of has its own language. So I tried to put the most frequently used ones, but usually the words are pretty similar. You should be able to parse out which one a question is depending on what class you're taking. But measuring or base rate or process question, the answer at the end of the paper would quantify the number of occurrences or identify a pattern within the issue. So that might be the fact that I read where South Asians are 5 times as likely to get type 2 diabetes than white people in the United States. That would be an answer that identifies a measurement of occurrence. Here I asked, does the increased intake of fast food at a young age impact the likelihood of developing type 2 diabetes? And then the last one is probably the most frequent, the process or solution focused. So this, at the end of the paper, the answer would identify or describe a way of solving the problem. And this is the question that I've used in the example. This is the type of that question. What can be done to prevent type 2 diabetes among South Asians living in the United States? So there's an issue. South Asian Americans disproportionately are affected by type 2 diabetes, and hopefully at the end of my paper, by addressing this research question, I can offer a solution. So your assignment this week will require that you go through this process of looking at your topic, restricting your topic, and then narrowing it by a population, and then developing a question. And within that, I also want you to think of other questions. So a descriptive or exploratory question, a cause and effect or causal question, a measuring or process-based question, and then a solution-focused question. You'll have to identify each of these, and then I want you to pick the one that you like the best, and that will be the one that you move forward with. And once you have the question, of course, we move into creating a search strategy. This is basically going to be the main start to the big gathering information jump. From here, we move into finding books, finding articles, and then eventually searching the open web. Initially, let's create a search strategy by first identifying the main concepts or keywords in our research question. Then we need to think of additional terms or added keywords. And then we create a search formula by using the Boolean operators that we covered a couple weeks ago. And then finally, we identify places to use our search formula. So with the search formula and then identifying places to use the search formula, that creates our search strategy. To begin, we need to ask ourselves, what are the major concepts in my research question? So for example, in my research question, what can be done to prevent type 2 diabetes among South Asians living in the United States? My major concepts are type 2 diabetes, South Asian, and United States. Then we need to think of additional terms for each of these major concepts. And this is important because not every single paper or a resource or book that we might want and might be relevant for our research, we'll use those exact terms. So we want to think of related terms. Sometimes these will be synonyms, so they'll have the exact same meaning, and other times they're just broader or narrower concepts, so they just have some sort of relationship to our major or main concepts. And this just helps us broaden our search in such a way that we can capture articles or books or resources that are related and helpful to our topic, but aren't using the exact same terminology. So the more you can think of, the better. For my example, I'm just going to think of one additional term for each major concept. So for type 2 diabetes, I'm going to use the related term diabetes, because if I find a paper that discusses diabetes prevention among South Asians in the United States, that's going to be useful. Even though it's not specifically about type 2 diabetes, it will still be useful. Then I'm going to look at the word Indian for South Asian, because a big part of South Asia is the country of India. If somebody has written a paper about type 2 diabetes and Indian Americans, then that's going to be useful. And even though it doesn't state specifically South Asians, I'm choosing a narrower concept, but it's still related, it's still valid. And then for United States, I'm going to choose the word America. Now, United States is a part of the Americas. They're not equal, they're not the same word. But if I find a paper on South Asians with type 2 diabetes anywhere in the Americas, that's going to be relevant for the United States. All right, so now that we have our major concepts and we've brainstormed some related words, we want to join the words together in a logical way using Boolean logic. So I'm going to join the major concepts using the word and. So type 2 diabetes and South Asian and United States, because I want any resource that has all three of those concepts. I don't want things with just type 2 diabetes and South Asian. I want type 2 diabetes and South Asian and the United States. They have to have all three of those concepts in them. However, I will accept the related terms for each concept, so I'm going to use the word or to separate those. So for the major concept of type 2 diabetes, I'll accept either type 2 diabetes or diabetes. For the major concept of South Asian, I'll accept the concept of South Asian or Indian. And for the major concept of United States, I'll accept United States or America. So once we have all the words joined together, we can start searching with this. However, just as a pro tip, look for words that might benefit from truncation. For example, the word South Asian. There might be a paper that just says South Asia. For example, the individual was from South Asia. But if I just look for South Asian, I'm going to miss that article. So the best way to do that without having to type South Asia or South Asian is to truncate the word. And do that using the little asterisk or the little star. And we can see that here. I've used it at the end of South Asia. I've removed the N from the word Indian, so now it just says India, so it'll find Indian or India. And I've also done the same with America, so I've removed the N, now it'll find American or America. So a better example of this might be the word bank or banking or banker. So if we type the word bank with an asterisk and we search the database for that, the database will retrieve articles with the word bank, banks, banking, banker, bankers, bankruptcy. All of those words would be returned. This is an advanced search tip, but I think we can start using it. You don't have to, but it is quite helpful. Alright, so now that we've joined all our words together, we've truncated the ones where it might be useful to truncate, we're ready to begin searching for materials. So once we've developed our search formula, in order to complete our search strategy, we need to start thinking about where we want to search. And when we're gathering information, we want to start broad, so we want to get a full background on background information on the topic, and then we start narrowing it down. So we've already looked at encyclopedias, but now we want to find books on our topic, and to do that we want to search the library catalog. Once we find some books on the topic, we want to really focus our research by looking at what individuals are researching and publishing articles on. So books are much bigger, the publication process takes a lot longer, so they often cover a broad expanse of a topic. So we might find a full book on diabetes. So to do that, we look in this library catalog, and since books are quite broad, we can probably do a search about diabetes and the United States, or even just diabetes to see what's in the catalog. And then to find articles, we go to databases A to Z, and this is where those subjects that you identified come in handy. Use the pull-down menu and select one of your subjects. I'm going to select nursing, and now we have a list of databases that have access to articles that are relevant to our subject. Academic Search Premier, which is a good general database for any subject, is listed here at the top, so we can pick that one and plug just our full search that we developed for diabetes in. So I'm going to put on the top line type 2 diabetes or diabetes. Then in the next line I'm going to put South Asia or India. And notice that the database already has the word "and" there separating my main concepts. And then in the third line I'm going to put United States or America. And I'm using the asterisk just as we did when we developed the search formula. And then I can search, and now we have a full list of relevant articles. Alright, so for the last little bit, after we've modeled a little bit of the searching, and of course we'll go more into how to search as we move forward in the quarter, but I want to just talk briefly about using controlled vocabularies, what that means, and how you can use it to your advantage. A controlled vocabulary is a standardized set of terms assigned by an indexer to help sort information by content and meaning. When searching for articles and books, knowing how to find and use a database's controlled vocabulary can help you search more efficiently. Controlled vocabularies are needed because people use different words to mean the same type of thing. For example, what is this? Is it a soda or is it a pop? Or maybe a carbonated beverage? Is this a picture of a restaurant or a picture of a cafe? How about this? Is this an automobile or is this a car? And lastly, is this a picture of a woman or a female? These are just some examples of why databases need controlled vocabularies. Databases use controlled vocabularies to choose one term and decide that they will use only that term when sorting items by subject. You are probably already familiar with some controlled vocabularies. If you have ever looked at a phone book, you would notice that they refer you to their standardized term. For example, if you were to look up doctor, you would be referred to physician. And if you were to look up cafe, you would be directed to restaurants. Or if you look in a book index to find out if a book contains information about a particular subject. Or even if you have just looked up a word in a thesaurus. These are all examples of items that use controlled vocabularies. Generally, when you search in a database for books or articles, you search by using keywords, or you can search using the database's controlled vocabulary. Keyword searches are when you think about the major concepts in your research question and identify the keywords and then some additional terms. These are user-generated and are more intuitive. When doing a keyword search in a database, the database scans through the material and tries to match your keyword with words in the material. However, these user-generated words may not return all of the potential results for a particular subject. A database's controlled vocabulary, or its subject headings, are created specifically by indexers to describe items within that database. Searching a database for one of its subject headings will guarantee you at least one result, since in order for that subject heading to exist in that database, an indexer would have had to assign it to an item within. Searching using the subject headings searches the controlled vocabulary that has been assigned to articles with that same subject. So these can be more reliable, but they are often less intuitive and less flexible, since by definition they are controlled. Additionally, it can be hard to find the subject term for a new or emerging field if it hasn't been created for that database yet. Since both methods of searching each has its own benefits and its own drawbacks, it is helpful to use each when searching for books or articles. Let's go through 2 examples of how to use keyword searching to identify subject headings and then use those subject headings to locate additional resources. Let's begin at the library catalog and do a keyword search for diabetes. I am interested in preventing diabetes in South Asian Americans, so this book titled Prevention of Diabetes looks perfect. I'm going to click on the title to view more information, and I can also see the subject headings assigned to the book. We can see here that this book has been assigned only one subject heading, and the subject heading is Diabetes-Prevention, which happens to be exactly what I'm looking for, even though I didn't know to type it in that way. Now I can click there to see how many other books in the library's collections have all been assigned that exact subject heading. And it looks like there are 5. Now I can click the subject heading to view the 5 items that all have that same subject heading. Now let's follow the same steps using the library databases. Specifically, I'm going to use Academic Search Premier. Choose Library Databases A to Z, then Nursing from the pull-down menu, then select Academic Search Premier. I'm going to plug in my full search formula to perform a keyword search. Now I can look through the results until I see one that looks relevant to my topic. Here's one that looks like it might be interesting. I can click on the title to view more information, just as we did in the library catalog. Here I can see that the database just uses the term Asians and doesn't necessarily differentiate South Asians. If I click on Asians, the database retrieves all articles with the subject heading of Asians. And now I can add diabetes as a keyword to narrow my search a bit. And here is an article that looks even more interesting since it's specifically on my topic. In summary, use keyword searches to begin your search, and then use the controlled vocabulary of the database or the database subject headings to refine and add to your search.